there, Army VIPs. It's your buddy Choppadong, and we're going to cover the early slate Saturday on a weekend. Bonus coverage. You know, I'm pretty much a Monday through Friday guy, but I mean, when I'm hot and heavy, I'm playing daily, and I've got new guys in there that are asking, and you guys are giving feedback and telling me that you're appreciating the help, then I'm just going to be a 24/7 kind of guy. So my goal is to help you guys. When we're talking about early slate, I'm going to focus more on single entry. Now I'm going to slap some MME stuff out there, if the quarters and whatnot aren't full when I get there, because I enjoy playing that style. And I'm going to set it up that way, but I'm also going to be talking more about single entry and where I would go. Because again, we're going to try and get a little bit off the chalk. We're not going to get, smack ass on it. We're going to get just a little bit off. And I do that in a little bit different way on, smaller slates, where I actually enjoy playing on smaller slates quite a bit because I believe that the contrarian approach really, really works. Because the slate is not so spread out. It's pretty concentrated in a couple of key areas. And when I look at the early slate teams, I'm looking for my favorite metric K-score, and I didn't even have to sort it. This is the first time I've ever seen it just come in order by default. That's pretty cool. But I'm looking at Rodon up top, of course, 644, big K-score. Probably a lot of striking out by his opponents. Haney is next. Alzolay, McGill, Cole Irvin. I looked at Cole Irvin and his game log's pretty impressive, honestly. But 9,000 is a lot to pay. When you're looking at this type of a sample size in K-score, I'm looking at, okay, so 644. That's a big number. Rodon is probably the best pitcher on the slate today. He's also probably going to be the heaviest chalk on the slate today. And I might look for a little bit different way to build some lineups in hopes that he has an average performance. At that salary, he has to have a pretty good performance to pay it off. So I want to make sure. Now in cash games, I'm playing it. He's got the highest floor. He's probably the most consistent, whatever. I'll just go ahead and lock down there. And I would just dare you to gamble with a lesser, skilled pitcher and try and beat me. So that's a different methodology, a different mentality. But in a tournament, I'm going to bank on that because I'm going to gain leverage by going a little bit away from that. I look for opportunities to take maybe the second or third best pitcher, just like I look for opportunities to take maybe the second or third best stack. To me, it makes sense. Does it work every night? No, of course not. I went 0 for 2 in my single entries last night. But when it does work, I tend to find myself a little bit more unique and a little bit more separated from the herd. But I'm not getting way crazy. I'm not taking Drew Anderson. I'm not stacking, Rangers last night or something like that. I'm just trying to stay just under the radar, not very far under it, just barely under the radar. That's where I like to hover. That's where I've found the most results in my own personal play. Andrew Haney fits that bill today. Irvin's nice, but at a 406 K-score, he's overpriced at 9,000 to me. Now, he might have a great game, and I hope he does, but I don't need to quite take that much risk. I almost would. I kind of want to do it, but I'm just for the sake of maybe explaining things to you guys, I'm going to stay a little bit more in my zone, and I'm going to look at Andrew Haney because he's got a high K-score as well, and he's $2,000 cheaper than Rodon. 100 points is a lot to give up in K-score. It really is. But, and then you could argue, this is where the argument comes in. Is $2,000 worth giving up 100 points? I don't know. It's pretty significant. If it was closer than 100 points, yeah, it would make a lot of sense to save the 2,000. So if you look at the next guy down at a 543 K-score, you got Alzolay at 6,700. Is it worth saving $2,000 to only give up 1 point of K-score? Yes, absolutely. So should I be on Alzolay? I wouldn't argue with you if you said you wanted to take that gamble. I would just tell you, make sure you know it is a gamble and don't expect it to work out, very often. It could, it might, it's got good chances, but don't expect it to happen with any kind of regularity. Rodon should be the best pitcher on the slate, but I think Haney has some upside. I think that, to me, saving that $2,000 and still getting a good K-score is great. I just don't want to go all the way down to Alzolay. Both Haney and Alzolay are risky. They've got high W scores, which means that the opponent's bats, can do some damage, and he gives up some WOBA against both pitchers. So that's, again, why your best pitcher on the slate is probably Rodon for cash. I just don't want to be there with everybody else doing it. It's good chalk. I just don't want to eat it myself. I like playing single entries with a little bit of a gamble in me. if I was playing, MME and stuff, I'd have a mix of all of them, and I'd probably have more Rodon, maybe more Rodon than the others, just because I don't know. I have to play with that and see how it goes. But on the slate, when it comes to W score, these two guys and this third one here in the middle at 610 and the bottom one at 617 are the best. So those are the four offenses we should be focused on as well. And that's Seattle, Chicago, flexing down here, Philly, and New York. New York's going to be chalk. Chicago White Sox are going to be chalk. Seattle will go under the radar because, especially if people are using Haney, because he's going to pick up some ownership as well. And Chicago White Sox, like I said, are going to be chalk. Philly will probably slide way under the radar today. When I come to the domination station, when I got that little idea in my head, come to the domination station, and I set it up to run numbers, right? If you know I do like 10 lineups, ownership cap, I'm trying to find the minimum number at which it will build lineups for cash games. That number got all the way up to 290 today. I mean, I was playing with 300 there for a little while, but it got to 290, 294, or something like that. So subtract 29 points, that's 10%, or roughly 30 points. 290 minus 30 is 260. So 260 is going to get you 10% off of the chalk, and that is good enough for cash games for me. I won't stack as much. I'll try to lock in chalky pitchers like Rodon and some value plays. I'll use the chalkboard for guys that I might use as a core play. Somebody that has a large discrepancy in their ownership number from a 25% down to like an 18%. I'll go, wow, that 25% guy's probably pretty critical today in a cash game scenario. So I'll use them, and I'll build my lineups that way, try and use it chalkboard and use this projected ownership cap slider. However, if I'm going to play a league, I want more risk. If I'm going to play a 20-man league, a 100-man league, something like that, I want more risk, because now we're getting into, unbalanced tournament structures. It's not where I just finished in the top half and I get paid $2. Now we're talking about getting into the top 3 on a 20-man league, maybe winning it, because third place pays, not as much as second, which pays not as much as first place. There's incentive to win these things. There's incentive to climb the leaderboard. So there's incentive to take risk and gamble on that upside and try. Now, I'm not going to go GPP crazy in a 20-man league because it's just not hard to beat 20 people. If you divide 1 into 20, you get 5%. So I've really got, as long as I win those leagues more than 5% of the time, or build a top 5% type lineup in any contest. If I played in the MME Nickels and it was 100,000 people, if I'm in the top 5,000, I'm in the top 5%. Those lineups are capable of winning a 20-man league, give or take, who your competition is that night. They are strong enough to win that league. So if I play that way, I'm going to come off of that 10% a little bit more to 20%, which means from the 290 down to the 260, I'm going to subtract 30 more points and come down to 260. I mean, so from the 290 to 260 to 230, I would set this number here at 230. For a league, for a 100-man league or whatever. And then I'd start stacking again, because correlating these points and stacking these offenses takes risk. But it's, if you're playing within the chalk and you're playing Yankees and White Sox and Oakland and whatever, you're staying within the chalk. You're taking sensible risk. And that's all it takes to win those tournaments. You combine your correlations a little bit and take sensible risk, not crazy wackadoodle, low-owned stuff on purpose. Just take sensible risk of correlation. And that's enough to win those leagues. That's enough to do well in the 100-man leagues too. That's how you beat those. And you don't need a big low-owned lineup. And that's what this is. This number here, this left-hand slider number, is kind of donkey prevention, if you will. So that's all I'm looking for. When I come down here now even lower for tournaments where I do, bigger 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 person tournaments where I do need to be lower owned in a couple of key spots, that's when I talk about pitching stack 1 and stack 2. And what I'm going to do is pick one of those spots to get a little bit lower owned, get a little bit contrarian, get a little bit off the chalk. And then this is going to donkey proof me from getting too low owned and going too crazy and then creating kind of a dead lineup or a negative EV lineup. It's going to help me stay. It's like my airbag in a car where, I can crash, but it's going to keep me a little bit safer. And so I won't maybe totally die. That's really all that's designed to do. So that would come down half of 290, which is about 140, 145. And there's your number. So I'm going to build everything over 140 today. I'm going to put in about 50 lineups. I'm going to use 3 uniques tournament mode with a lot of randomization. And I'm going to use 100% 4x3 on my first run. And I'm not going to put any weights or anything into any of this on my first run because I want to see what the optimizer likes in terms of stacking. And when I come down here and see, it's going to prefer stacks because it's a tournament building machine. It's not going to prefer Rodon because it doesn't want to see a lot of cash, a lot of wasted money when it's hard to hit the value, and produce the salary, produce and pay off the salary like it's going to take Rodon to do. So it's going to pick a Haney. And I like that because that's who I already said out of the research station I liked. It doesn't like Alzolay as much, but it likes Haney. Fine. So I'll rock and roll with that. And then when I look in the stacks, I see a lot of Chicago, Oakland, and New York. Like I said, these guys are favored, but Chicago's heavily favored in that first stack. And then it's a little bit balanced here for Oakland, Chicago, and then New York. So these are going to be your 3 favored teams today. If I'm building a single entry lineup, now I'm looking at those 3 teams. Do I want to stack Chicago and Oakland, or Chicago and New York, or Oakland and New York, or Oakland and Chicago, or whatever combinations? I can look to do that. I can look to build within those stacks. And now I can almost just blindly, without making any new adjustments, go picking boner lineups out of this. I've got Haney. I've got, what is this, a 4x3 New York and Chicago with Adolis Garcia as a one-off. I mean, that's okay. That'll be lower owned alone, all by itself. This 5% is what's going to get me a little bit unique. If those 2 games go off like they should, but Adolis Garcia is the best performing one-off, then I might win a tournament out of it. It's enough to separate me from the pack, that and Haney being off the Rodon chalk, right? And I come down here a little bit more. Now I've got a Chicago and an Oakland stack with a LeMahieu one-off. This is a chalky lineup. It's got Haney at a little bit lower ownership, but then it picks up Chapman in the 8 if he projects there at 5% ownership. There's my low-owned play. I'm pretty good to go there. I've got a 1-3-8. It's kind of a wrap stack where that bottom of the order can come around and help the top of the order. And then I've got 1-3-6-4, 1-3-4-6, kind of middle to top of the order in Chicago, and a LeMahieu one-off who has a high floor. So that's a solid line. I actually like that lineup quite a bit for as chalky as it is. Another one with Oakland in it, Olsen, Kana, Chapman again. So 1-3-8 again. Shifted up a little bit, 1-4-5-7. So it's a little bit different. White Sox stack, and it's got Giancarlo Stanton as a power one-off, right? So these are boner lineups, man. Every single one of these should just make you sport wood because these are all well-built lineups. Which one is going to perform? Hell, I don't know. If I knew that, I'd be the world champion and I'd never be sharing any of my methodology or my secrets because it's just too easy to create these types of lineups. If you wanted to get super crazy in some kind of big 50,000 person competition, then yeah, you might want to include some Philly, or you might want to include some Seattle and go against the chalk pitcher, or the Cubs, or whatever, and hope that because if that wins, you really thin the herd out in those giant GPPs. So if you're going to play those, you have to get even a little bit crazier than I'm doing here. But I'm not playing in my single entry stuff anything that requires me to get too crazy. So I can kind of sit in here. If I had to pick, I don't want to fade Chicago. I think they're in a great spot. I would fade Yankees because they're very boomer bust, and they're popular. I would bank on them busting. And I would probably pick a Chicago-Oakland stack. Now, I might use a Yankee one-off. I might use, even a Seattle or a Texas one-off, like a Kyle Seager or a Mitch Haniger, something like that. Probably helps me out a good bit. But that's basically where I'm going. And then I'll readjust for MME type of stuff. But I wanted to get this out to you today just to show you the idea of where my lineups are most likely going to go when I dump in a single entry lineup tonight and continue the challenge. Because I just want to prove to you that it doesn't take a lot of thought. It just takes understanding how the contest is won and understanding where your leverage is so that you can then, because baseball is so damn random that any one of these lineups could be the winning lineup. They're all great. They're all built really, really well. Even if I scroll all the way down here, and Yankees 4, White Sox 3, and Olsen as a one-off. This is also a great lineup. It's not significantly better or worse than any of those others that I was showing up at the top of the build. They're just not. Baseball's going to equalize it through some luck. And once you understand that, you can sleep at night. You can take the sweating off of yourself and all the pressure of being perfect off of yourself. And you can build generally strong lineups and then just pray for the best. That's what all of us are doing. It's what any pro is doing. It's what anybody out there is doing. They're just good at knowing when to take sensible risk and when to take a lot of risk based on the contest they're in. And that's why you're here at DFS Army, is because you're here to gain that kind of knowledge and that kind of advice. Hopefully you keep asking questions because I love producing these videos And I hope to see you guys at the top of the lineup. Leaderboards with me today because I'm 0 for 2 in the last couple of days. I need to get back on the winning track. Peace out, homies. We'll talk to you very soon.